Moving on to the next case in Unit 3, we're now on to dealing with free speech. And the case is called Tinker versus Des Moines. That is not Des Moines, it's Des Moines. And that's Des Moines, Iowa, as you can see in the picture on the screen. So Des Moines, Iowa, and specifically, it's the Des Moines, Iowa independent school system. So it's actually a school being sued. So this is always a really interesting case for students and usually one that they remember well. All right, so let's move on. You should have your sheet in front of you, print it out, or you're making notes on a blank sheet of paper if that's what you choose to do. Okay, here we go. All right, so the issue is free speech in school. Free speech in school. At any time, please pause the video so that way you can write down, but we're dealing with free speech in the classroom. All right, key clause is going to be, not surprisingly, free speech clause, First Amendment. So free speech clause, First Amendment. Pause it if you need it. I'm moving onward. All right, facts of the case. And actually, the children, the Tinkers, the two children known as the Tinkers, they're to the left here. There was a group of students at a high school in Des Moines, Iowa, and they wanted to protest the war in Vietnam. So again, a group of students want to protest the war in Vietnam. And you can see that the students in the picture here are holding these black armbands. And what the students came up with, and you can see it in the photograph here with the two children when they were younger, they wear black armbands to school in protest to the Vietnam War. So there's no protest like they're saying anything. They're just wearing these like black armbands. And they encourage other students to do it as well. The principal finds out about it ahead of time, and he says if students show up with a black armband, they have to remove it or they will be suspended from school. Mary Beth Tinker, the girl in the picture here, wears it. She gets suspended. Her brother ends up doing the same thing, and he gets suspended too. The parents sue that this is a violation of free speech. Okay, so they wear armbands. Principal says remove it or be suspended. Mary Beth Tinker wears it. She gets suspended, and the parents sue in violation of free speech. You might want to pause here in order to get the rest of this. All right, key question. Is wearing an armband, which we would consider symbolic speech because it's not, actually saying anything out loud, but it is symbolic speech in protest protected by free speech clause. So that's the question. Is this armband protected by the free speech clause? By the way, just interestingly, that is Mary Beth Tinker on the left-hand side. That's her today, and that's her back then. So she goes around and speaks about this Supreme Court case because it's obviously a very famous Supreme Court case. So she goes to colleges and law schools and whatnot and talks about free speech. All right, awesome. Let's move on to the next one. All right, the vote ended up being 7-2 for Tinker. And there's Tinker and her mother at some sort of school board meeting talking about her being suspended. And she's wearing the armband. All right, so 7-2 for Tinker. She wins. The ruling is this. Tinker wins, and they say the armbands are pure speech. They're pure speech. It's like the definition of free speech, basically. And the Supreme Court says that students do not lose their First Amendment rights in school. Now, that said, your free speech in school is limited, but you don't lose it. They can't just do anything to you and force you to stop saying things or protesting something. But you don't lose them entirely, yet you don't have them entirely. So we've talked about that in class. So here's what the limitation is. Schools must prove a disruption to suppress student speech. So like I've said before, like if you don't have the right to just talk to your neighbor all through class. You don't have that right. You can't then say, well, I have free speech rights. You don't. If it's a disruption, the school can suppress student speech. So that's really where the critical line is drawn. Whereas this armband, it's like no one's saying anything. Now, if the armband caused a disruption and everyone was talking about it and it just caused drama, then a school could be justified in suppressing it. But this armband evidently caused no drama. People were just wearing it and everyone was able to go to class and listen and learn. So that's really key to remember. It's all about disruption to the educational process. When that happens, you don't have free speech as a student. And so they say that since there was no disruption, the armbands are protected. In this case, they said there was no disruption, so armbands are protected. All right, cool. Go ahead and pause if you need to. The dissent. The dissent were 2 justices, and they said, well, if the armbands caused even a distraction, school has a right to discipline. So their argument wasn't that it was disruptive, but that it could have caused a distraction from the classroom. Like, why does she have the armband on? And so therefore, the school would have a right to discipline. All right, awesome. And that is the end of Tinker versus Des Moines. All right, so go ahead and study this for a second before we move on to the next case.